What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Today we're going to talk about budgeting. Let's get it. So, why is budgeting important as strength and conditioning coaches? Number one, we've got to pay for stuff, whether it be salaries for our coaches, maybe we're focused on getting or replacing equipment. All this stuff costs money that we need to pay in order to run our programs. In addition, many budgets are tight, which means that we need to be creative with the equipment we purchase and how can we generate income. Those will be the two big topics we'll talk about in today's presentation. So first of all, let's talk about equipment. I like to classify equipment in a few different categories. Okay? This first category is going to be durable. So these types of equipment there are ones that will be expected to last for many years. Things along the lines of racks. So whether it be half racks, full racks, those are metal. They can last a long period of time. Platforms oftentimes will last a while without a whole lot of maintenance done to them. Benches we have, whether they be flat or incline. Plates, bumper plates, the ones that you would drop, and then iron plates that you would typically put on barbells. Things like dumbbells and kettlebells, as long as we don't drop them, they should be able to last for a long period of time. Weight storage systems. A lot of racks will have weight storage systems on them where we can put our weights that we add to the end of the bars. But we might also have some other things. For example, next to platforms, we have weight storage places to put our bumper plates. There are some weight trees where we can put plates on. That would typically be things where you might see a preacher curl machine or maybe next to a leg press. So there are also some other places where we can store weights. Those will be quite durable. Machines that are non-cable in nature. So things that just have a pivot or some sort of lever, those would last quite a long time. Things like sleds and prowlers last a while. And then flooring. As long as the flooring is made for what it's supposed to handle. For example, in a lot of weight rooms, they've got a concrete floor, and then on top of that concrete floor is a rubber mat, and we're between half an inch to possibly an inch there. Those rubber flooring, they are great, they protect the floors, but we don't want to drop hard metal onto them. Things like regular weights that you would add to the end of the bars, those stuff you do not want to drop on the ground there. You don't want to drop dumbbells on that. And you really don't even want to drop bumper plates on those as well. Because that flooring is not made to withstand a ton of hard, heavy impact. That is one reason why we typically have platforms so that we have a place for people to drop things and it's not going to damage the floor underneath. Now, especially in recent years, there is some flooring that is made for weights to drop on it. You'll see these in some weight rooms where the entire flooring essentially is a platform per se, because the flooring is thick enough to be able to handle and absorb the impact. But typical rubber flooring, it's durable as long as you're not dropping heavy weights on it, and especially metal weights. Second category of equipment. This stuff is semi-durable. Now, this stuff, if taken care of, can last for many years, but oftentimes regular maintenance needs to be done on them to keep them working efficiently, and possibly small parts on those pieces of equipment might need to be replaced fairly often. Number one would be cable machines. Cable machines work well as long as the pulleys spin well, and as long as the cables stay in their tracks. But as soon as the cables go off the pulley or they start rubbing off to the side, what happens is that the cables start to fray. And when that happens there, the cable breaks, then you got to get a new cable to put into those machines. So they're not as nice as the pivot machines that I talked about for the other type of machine, but these are somewhat durable as long as you make sure those parts keep moving efficiently. Cardio machines, things like treadmills, ellipticals, maybe stationary bikes, they might need to be oiled on a fairly regular basis. At least I know treadmills do. You also need to make sure that they are functioning properly. Again, any belts or whatnot, make sure they're on their tracks and they're not getting off track which would lead to excessive wear and tear on those, as well as tightening up some screws, nuts, and bolts. Upholstery on benches and machines. Over time, the fabric on it will start to degrade, become stiff, and start to crack. It's one reason why a lot of benches or equipment, they'll have essentially a wraparound on top of the actual pad itself. And there what happens is once that wraparound starts to crack and break, we just replace the wraparound so you don't have to reupholstery the entire pad. And finally, sound systems. As long as you make sure the volume is not cranked up super high, those can last a while, but sometimes things get finicky with them. So these are just some examples of some semi-durable equipment that should last you a while, but might need some regular maintenance on them. And then finally, consumable equipment. These pieces of equipment need to be purchased regularly. Things like chalk for grip. Okay, it gets used up a lot. We need to replace that often. Bands. Bands get stiffer and they start to crack over time. So with that there, make sure you're checking your bands to see if there's any rips or whatnot that's happening so that it doesn't accidentally break when someone's using it, which could cause a risk of an injury. Especially if they're pulling that band towards their eyes, we don't want that band to break and snap back and hit their eyes. Med balls. With med balls here, there are two types. There are solid ones, and then there are ones that are soft. The soft ones are made to slam on the ground, as well as to launch up high into the air. These soft med balls are made to impact the ground, so they will last longer for slam exercises, as well as exercises where you toss those medicine balls into the air, a lot longer compared to the hard med balls. To get the hard med balls lasting longer, you typically want to focus more on chucking them sideways, because that will minimize the impact when they hit the ground. However, even if when used correctly, med balls have to get replaced on a regular basis. Make sure that your cleaning sprays and detergent there are stocked full because we use those often. Detergent more so if you've got towels and you do your own laundry for the towels in the weight room. A lot of times for different drills, we will mark the floors for different spots where we're going to put cones or maybe lines. So tape for marking floors, that stuff needs to be replaced. Batteries for electronic equipment. These would be things like a jump mat, things like timing gates, even something simple as stopwatch batteries. While stopwatch batteries can last a long period of time, they do eventually will need to be replaced. So make sure you have extra batteries. Towels. Towels can get grungy even if you wash them on a regular basis. That and the dryer is going to probably wear them out. So make sure you get extra towels there and budget for that in your budget. This is not an issue with smaller schools, but Division I schools will a lot of times provide food and supplements to their athletes there. And if that's the case there, if you're working at one of those schools, you will have to budget for those consumable items. At lower levels, we typically don't have the budget for that, so we don't supply those, so that's not an issue for us in our budgets. Printing supplies, so paper and ink. Make sure that those are refilled on a regular basis. And then software subscriptions. For example, TeamBuildr is a software that is used to track workouts. Coaches pay a yearly fee to have a certain number of athletes there that they will record and track their progress. So any software there probably will have a recurring payment that's needed for them. And then I finally have an other category. These things are extra. They are needed to make the facility run. If you're depending on your role, you may or may not be in charge of budgeting for these type of items. If you're a private gym, you definitely will. Public, there might be somebody else who's in charge of budgeting for those things. Things like lighting. Who's going to pay the light bill? Who's going to pay for the bulbs when they go out? HVAC maintenance. This is your heating, air conditioning, as well as ventilation. In gyms that are poorly ventilated and have poor climate control, what you'll oftentimes find is that their bars tend to rust. Metal plates tend to rust. Machines, if they got moving parts, they might be more likely to rust. And that's not good because that causes excessive wear and tear faster on it. Number two, you've got rusty hands if you grab those bars. And number three, the barbells themselves probably won't spin as well if they are rusty. So make sure that your HVAC maintenance is up to date, and that will in turn help your equipment to last longer. Things like water and plumbing. Okay, who's paying for that? A lot of times it's a facility, but if it's you own your own private gym there, you have to pay for that stuff. And then things like facility insurance and facility taxes. Just like you have to pay for home insurance and home taxes, property taxes, the same thing goes with the facility you're working out of. So those are some other pieces of budget items that you might need to be accounted for. Here are a select of several pretty good, reputable equipment vendors that you can go to in order to purchase pieces of equipment. For weightlifting, especially things along the lines of Olympic weightlifting, bars, bumper plates, things along those lines. Eleiko, quite good there. Elite FTS is fantastic. Perform Better has some. Rogue is good. USECA and York are all great sources there for especially barbells and weights that go on those bars. If you're looking for overall weight room equipment, so having a variety of things such as kettlebells, dumbbells, bands, sandbags, med balls, things along those lines, Perform Better is fantastic. Rogue is pretty good. Elite FTS is pretty good. So those are probably some good examples there for extra weight room equipment. For cardio equipment, Woodway, right here in Waukesha, is a fantastic place there to get some of those pieces of equipment. Some of these other companies will sell them as well, but Woodway, fantastic company for that. So just some ideas for reputable equipment vendors that you can take a look at. They're not the only ones, but these are ones at least you can start looking through when looking for pieces of equipment. Along with equipment, you've got your staff costs. And there's a lot of things in here that go into costs for staff aside from just salary. Salary is going to be your biggest expense, but there's others as well. If you got graduate assistants, part of your staff, if you're offering a tuition reimbursement or tuition remittance there, that is going to cost money. So you got to budget for that. Background checks cost a little bit of money. Not a lot, but some. The hiring process, the onboarding process, it's either going to cost something or it's going to cost you time that you could have spent doing something, but instead you've got to get someone hired and get someone up to speed on how things are run in your facility. Some places will give some professional development reimbursement. Things like recertifications could be your CPR, AED. It might be your professional certification. For example, my certification is the CSCS, Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist, done through the National Strength and Conditioning Association. Some places will reimburse you to get recertified for that. Some places will also pay for you to go to conferences. We'll be paying for the actual conference. Maybe it pays for travel. Maybe it pays for food. In some places, it will also pay for where you sleep, okay, if you need a hotel room. Apparel, repping your schools or your place of employment, repping the company brand, you need to have apparel for that. So budget for those things. Then a couple others you might not have thought of. Number one, liability insurance. While I'm confident it probably would not happen, especially if I'm making sure that I'm crossing my I's, dotting my T's, and make sure I'm supervising properly and creating well thought out strength and conditioning programs, There's always a risk that someone might get injured lifting weights. And because of that, in the rare case where you might accidentally get sued, where you might get sued, you want to have some liability insurance so that can pay for those costs there for someone suing you. Liability insurance not only on the person itself, but also on the facility as well. You may or may not need liability insurance for your facility, depending on where you work. And then finally, benefit contributions. So, number one, if you are hiring someone, you may probably will have to pay for some sort of insurance there. Okay? For example, my employer pays part of my premiums for my health insurance, my dental insurance, and my vision insurance there. Okay? So they help out to a degree with all those types of insurance there. If I were to pay out of pocket for my current health plan right now, as I'm recording this video, for myself and my family there, it would cost me over $25,000 per year in premiums. That means that is what I would pay if I didn't have my employer, in my case, the UW system, paying for some of my health insurance premiums. Instead of that, though, I'd probably pay roughly about $1,000 per year in health insurance premiums. And that's because my employer takes up 85 to 90% of the premiums that I would have paid. In addition, you might decide, or might be required to pay for part of your employer's retirement contributions. A few different examples of that is a pension. So, for example, part of every one of my paychecks goes towards paying for my pension, and the University of Wisconsin system puts money in towards my pension as well. Pension essentially is a fund that in retirement will give you a baseline amount that they will pay you every month for the rest of your life. Other retirement possible contributions is a 401k or a 403b. Essentially, they're the same things. Some employers will contribute money towards these retirement programs as long as you invest part of your paycheck into these. And finally, health savings accounts. So these essentially, you could pay for medical bills tax-free. Some employers there will contribute towards one of your health savings accounts. Again, these are just some of the examples of different retirement programs that your employer might offer. And if you are employing people yourself, you might be offering these as well. So all these costs there, we need to take into account when creating our budget. Here are a couple, I want to show you some examples of some of these things, these benefits and whatnot in action. First one here, looking at how much the employer contributes versus how much the employee contributes. There's a lot of different pieces of information here. To try to break it down as simple as possible, the first thing I want you to look at is HDHP Quartz. So this is my health insurance. Now, at the top here, this shows how much out of one of my paychecks that the University of Wisconsin system will pay towards my health insurance premiums. And this is the total number of health insurance premiums that the UW system has paid on my behalf for this current year or whatever this year this was taken from. This is not the final amount. This was just a random paycheck taken throughout the year. So notice there, $23,000 at the time that this was taken of health insurance premiums that my employer, the UW system, has paid for me. Now compare that to how much I've paid. Out of every one of my paychecks, instead of $1,000, $52. So my total payments year to date for health insurance premiums is just a little over $1,000 as of this paycheck, wherever this paycheck lined up in the year. So again, employer pays a boatload more towards those health insurance premiums compared to me. So if you're hiring people and you offer health insurance, understand the costs that come with that. Second thing I want to point out here, health savings account. Okay, so health savings account, again, is that benefit that I can pay into to help pay for medical expenses tax-free. And I will contribute some. So for example, every paycheck, I'll contribute some. This paycheck happened to be $438. And then my employer will also contribute a little bit to that as well. Similar things you see with dental insurance premiums, and then Wisconsin retirement system. This is the pension system that I'm a part of there. Again, part of my paychecks go towards this pension, and part of the UW system, they contribute some money towards my pension. So a lot of different costs there, looking at what the employer contributes and what the employee contributes. So if you're an employer, understand that these costs might come with hiring people. Along the same lines there, let's look at taxes. So out of your paycheck there, you've got to pay some taxes, but your employer also pays some of those taxes as well. Top here, okay. Essentially, this is a fancy acronym for Social Security. If you want to look it up, you can, but this is essentially how much your employer pays towards your Social Security. Notice your employer will pay half, and then you, as an employee, will pay half. Medicare there is basically will pay for your health insurance in retirement. Again, employer pays for some, and then you as an employee will pay for some. My particular employer does not pay towards state taxes. So these taxes right here, these are the amount that I'm withholding from my paychecks to pay for the taxes, my income taxes from a state level, the state of Wisconsin. Federal withholding is these are taxes that I pay directly out of my paycheck towards my tax bill at the end of the year. So again, taxes also as an employer, you're going to be in charge of paying for some of your employees' taxes. So make sure to budget for that. Why do we get enough income to pay for all these different things? First of all, memberships or student fees. At the university that I work at, currently each student will pay a little bit of money every semester to use the weight room. And part of that, those student fees there will go towards my salary. If you're working at a private gym, memberships. So especially recurring monthly, recurring yearly, or maybe one day pass memberships, those will pay for all those different things as well. If you're at the collegiate level, athletic department might pay for some of your budget there. Other job responsibilities as well. So for example, I do part-time coaching, so that's part of my salary there, but I also teach some exercise science classes. That the tuition that students pay for these exercise science classes, that goes towards my salary. Some places, as a strength and conditioning coach, you'll coach a sport along with being a strength and conditioning sport. For example, at the time of recording this video, at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, some of their assistant sport coaches will be in charge of doing strength and conditioning for some of their other teams. For example, the assistant gymnastics coach would probably be in charge of programming strength and conditioning for gymnastics, and then maybe tennis and soccer. Additionally, along with coaching, part of your salary might be supplemented by supervising the recreation facility. So at some schools, these strength and conditioning coaches are also in charge of supervising the entire facility, or they'll also be in charge of hiring students to work the facility, hiring students to clean up the facility, and just help budget for those entire facilities as well. In the collegiate setting, sometimes you can get a grant to help pay for some things. One great way to do this is to connect with academic research projects. For example, when I was in graduate school, I applied and successfully obtained a grant to pay for my research project. Keep it short and simple. Essentially, at football practice, some of the football players would wear a glorified heart rate monitor that also tracked how fast they ran, tracked the number of jumps they made, the total distance covered, things along those lines. And based off of that we compared how hard they were working at practice to their vertical jump scores. My grant, when I applied for that, paid for extra straps to be used in that project because those straps there were a consumable. They would eventually, over time, wear down, crack, and then would need to be replaced. So if you're able to find a teacher or a professor that is doing research, maybe you can connect with them to get a certain piece of equipment that you want. Asking people for donations, great way to do this. There are people out there who are willing to donate towards athletic causes there. You just got to find the right people for that. And then fundraising. Okay? Fundraising is a great way to do that. Some people, kind of a few different ways that you could do that. I'll talk about the end of this presentation. I think on a future slide I have it, but some ideas about fundraising. Some things to consider here. I would highly recommend that you get long-lasting, durable equipment. Spend more of your budget on those things because in future years, you won't need to budget nearly as much to keep those things. So for example, free weights versus machines. Machines have a lot more moving parts. Therefore, they're more likely to break down, which means repairs. We have to have more repairs, which are going to make things more costly. Versus free weights, they can last a long time before those need to be replaced. So probably spend more of your budget on free weights and probably less on machines just to make your budget go farther. Another example, free weights versus bands. I love bands. They give a lot of flexibility in the type of exercises we can do. But because they wear out quite quickly, those need to be replaced oftentimes on a yearly basis. So free weights will last a lot longer than them. So probably spend more of your budget on free weights and less on bands. Secondly, if your facility is small, we need to maximize the floor space. So choose pieces of equipment that will get the most out of the space that you have. One example, in-ground platforms versus above-the-ground platforms. Platforms that raise 2 to 3 inches off the ground, they're a tripping hazard. Therefore, it limits how much walkable space you have when you've got those above-ground platforms. So, my recommendation, if possible, again, it's pricier, if you can get in-ground platforms, they'll make everything flat, allows you to use the space a lot more. Second example, adjustable dumbbells versus sets of dumbbells. Dumbbell racks take up a lot of space in the facility. Benefit of them is that we can get multiple athletes using dumbbells at the same time. The downside, though, is that they take up a crap load of space. In addition, get lots of dumbbells, it's pretty pricey. Now compare that to adjustable dumbbells. Adjustable dumbbells, a lot of different brands out there. The pair that I currently have, it's a set of they're called power blocks. Essentially, it's a set of dumbbells where you can adjust how much weight is on those dumbbells. That weight can range from 5 pounds to 90 pounds in roughly 5-pound increments. So you can adjust that set of dumbbells to be 15 pounds. And then maybe later on you can adjust it to be 25 pounds. And then maybe one set is 80 pounds. But that one set of adjustable dumbbells, when I purchased it, was about $750. To get the same amount of weights, essentially a 5-pound set of dumbbells, 10 pound, 15 pound, 20 pound, all the way up to 90 pounds, for a set of dumbbells is going to probably go northwards of $3,000 at the time of recording this video. So adjustable dumbbells are a lot more cost effective than a set of dumbbells. In addition, adjustable dumbbells, the amount of space they can take up is just 2 dumbbells. So it takes up a lot less floor space than sets of dumbbells will. Now, I know that you're going to have to get more sets of adjustable dumbbells if you're going to have multiple athletes using these dumbbells at the same time. But from a space perspective, adjustable dumbbells win over sets of dumbbells. Another example, half racks versus full racks. A full rack means that you've essentially got a cube of metal, where it's basically a whole box in, and you got metal, vertical metal pipes, okay, or standards, and you do your squats in them. I like that because it keeps things safe and secure. The downside, though, is the posts on the back side of the rack, that takes up quite a bit of space. If you got half racks, they don't have those back posts. So therefore, we can, as long as we have the safety bars in and not out, it opens up more space in our facility to do things. So in small facilities, try using 3 of these different tips there to help get the most out of your space. Depending on your company there, especially if you're a public, if you're purchasing a large purchase, so a few $1,000s or more, you might be required to get quotes from a few different companies before you can purchase the equipment items that you're looking at. So just be aware of that. You're going to have to get those things before you actually buy your equipment. Along the same lines there, when you're buying equipment, develop positive relationships with your vendors. These vendors will help you out in a couple ways. Number one, they've probably seen quite a few weight rooms created and developed. So these, especially if you're trying to maximize your space, you can ask them for some advice and they can help you make a plan of how you're going to lay out the equipment in your space. They're great for that. Number two, especially if you're buying a lot of equipment from them, they're more likely to give you discounts on the items that you purchase because they want your recurring business, but all you have to do is just ask. Just don't assume the sticker price that you see on their website is what it's going to cost. Ask them. Ask them for discounts, and that's going to help out a lot. Finally, some fundraising ideas. Number one is a lift-a-thon. So just like in, for example, basketball, they might have like a free throw-a-thon, where for every free throw you make, people are going to donate $1. Lift-a-thon, kind of the same thing, but maybe the total pounds that you lift, maybe in a bench press or a back squat or a deadlift, for example, the total amount of weight lifted, that person's going to donate $1 for every pound lifted. So lift-a-thons are a great idea, especially for high schools. Number two, host clinics. Every year I go to a strength and conditioning clinic. Oftentimes it's the Wisconsin Strength and Conditioning Clinic. And that's hosted by some university there. So by hosting a clinic, number one, it's great advertisement for your school. Number two, though, is there's possibilities that you might get some sort of kickback from all the fees that people pay to host the clinic at your school there. So hosting clinics might be a way to gain some money. Helping out at sporting events. So for example, I know at the university I'm working at, teams will help run different games for other teams. For example, the gymnastics team might be in charge of running the concession stand at the football game. At that concession stand, you might make a deal with your athletic director that part of the proceeds from concessions there goes back towards the gymnastics program. So as strength and conditioning, you probably could make that work as well. So your salary, making for working, volunteering your time at concessions, maybe you make the proceeds from the concessions and that goes back to your budget. Another idea, cleaning up bleachers. After basketball games, after football games, people unfortunately leave trash out there. And while I wish everyone picked up after themselves, not everybody does that. So having someone to pick up after that, great way there to make some money. Now, you're going to have to check if this is legal at your place of employment or not, but you might be able to sell food or supplements. But again, check the legality of that there. And then finally, asking for donations. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Have a good day. Yeah.